بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والعاقبة للمتقين، والصلاة والسلام على عبده ورسوله وخليله وصفوته من خلقه، نبينا وإمامنا وسيدنا محمد، وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سلك سبيله واهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. We're on the nullifiers of wudu, and the author rahimahullah ta'ala said, وَالنَّوَاقِدُ فِي الطَّهَارَةِ الصُّغْرَى ثَمَانِيَةٌ. There's 8 nullifiers of wudu. الْخَارِجُ مِنَ السَّبِيلَيْنِ. Anything exiting from the 2 private parts. The second one is وَالْفَاحِشُ مِنْ غَيْرِهِمَا. What exits from other than the 2 private parts, that's repulsive. The third one is the one pertaining to sleep. وَزَوَالُ الْعَقْلِ بِغَيْرِ نَوْمٍ يَسِيرٍ جَالِسًا أَوْ قَائِمًا. The fourth and fifth one are وَمَسُّ الْفَرْجِ وَالْمَرْأَةِ لِشَهْوَةٍ. Touching the private parts in a woman with desire. The sixth one is وَأَكْلُ لَحْمِ الْإِبِلِ. Eating the meat of a camel. The seventh nullifier of wudu is وَالرِّدَّةِ, apostasy. Then there's the eighth nullifier of wudu, and we said, the author said there's 8 nullifiers of wudu, but when he went to detail them, he did not detail the 8th one, and that is washing the deceased. And we talked about why and the details pertaining to that, and we said it's among mufradatul madhhab al-hanbali, and that it's not a nullifier because there's no authentic clear proof to indicate so. After those 8 nullifiers, we went beyond that to take additional nullifiers because we're teaching the book, this Hanbali book, according to the 4 madhahib. The next nullifier that some ulama mentioned, or some madhahib mentioned, is al-qahqaha fi as-salah. And we said that's not a nullifier because there's no clear proof on it being so. Laughing in salah. The 10th nullifier is al-wudu bil-shak. Wudu when in doubt. And that's what we finished off last week. We took the details pertaining to that mas'ala, and we concluded the rule is من تيقن الطهارة وشك في الحدث فهو متطهر. Whoever is on yaqeen that he's on tahara, on purification, on wudu, he's on tahara by yaqeen, by certainty, but then doubts whether he negated his wudu or not, he is on tahara, he is on wudu. من تيقن الطهارة وشك في الحدث فهو متطهر. ومن تيقن الحدث وشك في الطهارة فهو محدث. The opposite. Whoever is on yaqeen that he's not on wudu, he's not on wudu by certainty, but he doubts that he may have made wudu, he's not on wudu. Mawardi and Ibn Hazm and Ibn Qudama and An-Nawawi and others mentioned an ijma' on that. That was the rule for that fiqh mas'ala, taken from the fiqh principle al-yaqeen la yazulu bil-shak. Whatever is established by yaqeen, by certainty, is not removed by doubt. Now I said in the last class that there's some follow-up issues. You're on wudu by certainty, by yaqeen. You're waiting for salah, or you're in salah. Then you doubt whether you nullified wudu. We've established and agreed on the fact that that person's on wudu. Doubts don't remove certainty. Up to here we took that. What if I say, let me get out of this doubt and just go ahead and renew my wudu? Is it better to say, let me be safer and go make wudu and come back? Or is it better to remain waiting for the salah or stay in salah and kick the whispers and waswasa of the shaitan out of your mind? The answer to that is that the sunnah and the wara is in the sunnah. The sunnah and the wara is not to go renew your wudu. And I'll give some reasons for that. First of all, the sunnah, the wara, is not to renew the wudu based on the doubts. The sunnah, the wara, is to do what the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam suggested in that specific matter. What did he order sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He ordered not to leave salah unless you hear something or smell something. The sunnah is not to renew the wudu and say it's safer, because it's disobedience to what the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered. The safer route, the correct route, is always in submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. لا ينصرف حتى يسمع صوتا أو يجد ريحا. Another reason, in addition to that not being in accordance with the advice of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam doesn't speak or give advice in vain, when one does wudu from doubts like that we mentioned, it has ramifications aside from not following the sunnah. Wudu in such scenarios is a major cause of waswasa. Not renewing the wudu in such specific scenarios that we mentioned is among the best cures to killing waswasa in such matters. The hadith is a principle on curing the disease of waswasa. Going against the hadith and renewing the wudu is how waswasa at times starts. And that waswasa will gradually increase and will put one in distress and make him dislike the ibadah or feel it's difficult or burdensome or uncomfortable. And those inflicted with waswasa will tell you how difficult it is. Another reason, a third reason, is that these doubts are usually from the shaitan. The shaitan follows one to ruin and disrupt his ibadat. He tries to stop one from making salah. He tries to get one to ignore the adhan and iqamah. He tries to put doubts in one's mind before salah. When the shaitan fails in that, he tries to get him to doubt whether he said Allahu Akbar or the niyyah or matters pertaining to the beginning of the salah. Then the hadith in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim states that when one stands up for salah, the shaitan goes to him to confuse him and cause him doubts in the number of rak'at. Among the last attempts that the shaitan tries to do is to destroy one's salah by making him doubt his wudu during salah. So the Messenger gave us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the preemptive solution to that. So no one will fall into the traps of the waswasa of the shaitan. And the solution is to turn away from the doubts. You don't give in to the doubt by renewing wudu in such scenarios, unless, of course, one is certain that they nullified the wudu. When one follows that rule consistently, they'll see that by the will of Allah, it's a cure to the waswasa in such scenarios. Once one gives in and renews the wudu, waswasa will intensify until one can no longer bear it. The hadith says, حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ صَوْتًا أَوْ يَجِدَ رِيحًا. So when one is in doubt, he kills it by ignoring the doubt. You don't yield and give way to the shaitan by giving into the doubt. Another issue pertaining to this. The hadith says, حتى يسمع صوتا أو يجد ريحة. One shouldn't leave the salah unless he smells something or hears something. Okay, let's assume someone is deaf. Let's assume someone has a cold and stuffy nose and he can't smell. Or let's assume someone has a temporary or permanent loss of smell. Some people do have that. The hadith says, حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ صَوْتًا أَوْ يَجِدَ رِيحًا. You don't leave the salah. Pay attention to the specific wording of the hadith. You hear something or you smell something. If you're in salah and you doubt, you nullify the wudu by discharge of wind, the hadith says you don't leave the salah unless you smell something or hear something. The person can't smell or hear for any of the various reasons. What do? The hadith here is talking about the solution for this problem the majority of the times. Most will hear or smell something. That's the overall rule. But if one is at full yaqeen that he discharged wind but didn't hear or smell it, he's on yaqeen, certainty. He nullified his wudu. He'll give an oath by Allah that he nullified it, but he didn't hear or smell something. He's deaf, he didn't hear. He has a stuffy nose, he couldn't smell. Or he's healthy, but he didn't hear or smell anything. But he's on full yaqeen, full certainty that he nullified the wudu by the discharge of wind. The answer is his wudu is nullified. The salah must be broken if he's in salah and he needs to go perform wudu. If he's waiting for salah, he needs to go renew his wudu. Why? Because this is no longer doubts. This is yaqeen that he nullified the wudu. When one has the knowledge to the level of yaqeen, to the level of certainty that he discharged wind, there's no need for the stipulation of smelling or hearing. What is it for then? The Messenger ﷺ set hearing and smelling as signs for one who is in doubt, not one who is on yaqeen that he nullified his wudu. In a 2-line summary, if one is sure to the level of yaqeen, certainty, to where he can give an oath that he nullified his wudu, he needs to go and renew the wudu even if he didn't hear or smell anything. Abdullah ibn Mubarak said, إِذَا شَكَّ فِي الْحَدَثِ فَإِنَّهُ لا يجب عليه الوضوء حتى يستيقن استيقانا يقدر أن يحلف عليه. Ibn al-Mubarak said, if one doubts he nullified his wudu, then he doesn't have to make wudu unless he has yaqeen, certainty that he nullified the wudu to the point that he can give an oath on it. In Nawawi, in Sharh Muslim, said that one shouldn't leave the salah unless he hears or smells something. Like the hadith, he was explaining that hadith. He said the hadith, the purpose of that hadith is to teach us that wudu is nullified only by certainty. And he said it's not just by hearing or smelling the discharge of wind, but rather when one is certain in any way that he nullified wudu, then it's considered nullified. And he said that is by the ijma' of the Muslimin. Meaning the hearing and smelling are like examples or signs to indicate certainty. Ibn Hajar and Abu Yahya al-Shafi'i and Al-Khattab and others held the same view as An-Nawawi, that certainty that one nullified his wudu by discharge of wind means he nullified it even if he didn't hear or smell something. And the reason I mention this, because some, including one of my teachers, former teachers, Muhammad ibn Muhammad al-Mukhtar al-Shanqiti, the younger one, who I mentioned in the past, was my teacher and my father's classmate, and he's now one of Hay'at Kibar al-Ulama in the Arabian Peninsula. He adopted the view that one must hear or smell something for his wudu to be nullified or void. In a response to a question, he was asked about this specific issue. He was asked if one is certain or positive that he discharged wind but didn't hear or smell anything, is his wudu nullified? And his answer was, how can it be possible without hearing or smelling something? He said, that's from the shaitan. If you hear or smell something, then the wudu is nullified. Otherwise, it's not a nullifier. That's according to him. We established that if someone is certain and sure he nullified wudu, discharged wind to the point where he can give an oath, like Ibn al-Mubarak said, but didn't hear or smell something, his wudu is nullified. Because, as the Nawawi and others stated, it's not limited to hearing or smelling only. Hearing and smelling were only to indicate certainty of the wind being discharged. This concludes the 10th nullifier of wudu, and we'll continue inshaAllah next week. Jazakum Allahu khaira wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.